Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker Show. This is your midweek roundup of all things maker and embedded and lovely. This week we have some projects, we have things on funding websites, a whole load of news and of course the mystery box competition, so let's get started. We're going to start this week's show off with just a little bit of news, and I might as well say right up front, if you think I'm speaking a little quieter than usual this episode, I am. Again, I'm recording this show in the very middle of the night. We're almost back to some kind of normality here, but there's still going to be instances of me doing it like this, so this is going to be very much a calmer show and possibly slightly shorter. I apologize for that in advance. Anyhow, the news that we are beginning this week's show with is the announcement of the Arduino IDE 2.0. It is now in beta. The new Arduino IDE can be tested by you. It is available to download now, and this is a pretty exciting thing. For many people, the Arduino IDE may have been the first time they actually coded, might be the first time they used hardware, and that first IDE, the first version of it, was very simple. And that's a good thing. I think the less moving parts in some ways made it easier for people to understand things like code syntax, for example. But yeah, it was missing a lot of features, and as it says here, this is the path they took from a simple IDE to an advanced IDE. I'm not going to go through every single part of this, but the important thing really here is that it's not only is it announced, it is now available. There is a beta that you can download, and yeah, it feels like a modern editor. And in fact, rather than just talk about the blog post, let's have a very, very quick look at it. And here we are in the Arduino IDE version 2. Now, the only thing I've done is opened it up and installed support for the basic AVR boards, installed a stepper motor library, one I've been messing around with recently, and turned the theme to dark because I am a fan of dark theme. And that's pretty much all I have done in this thing so far. And as you can see already, we have a nice drop-down menu for selecting your boards. I've already got this code in. This is just from the Axel Stepper library. It's a good way of showing some of the nice new things we have here because, as you can see, if I start typing this stepper, it shows me the variable stepper and I can autocomplete it, which is nice. And if I then press start and press S, I have all of the functions from that library that I can autocomplete. There's some stuff that we did not have before with the Arduino IDE, which is very nice. There are a boards manager on the side. Sorry, this is the library manager on the side here. And because I have this zoomed in for the video, it doesn't look particularly normal. But yeah, now you don't have to dive through the old library manager that took forever to load. This thing, you just go bing and it is there. And you can search through it pretty quickly. If I just type ESP32-M1, I need to put in now. And there we go, straight away. All of the familiar ESP8266 libraries are there. But the most exciting part can be found just up here with the very familiar symbol. The Arduino IDE now has a debugger. Now, I haven't had a chance to play with this at all. I'll get back to you about it. As I said, maybe I'll do a stream on it. I suspect you will have to use some kind of debugging tool, like a J-Link or a ST-Link, something like that. I will look into it, and maybe we'll have a little dive into this one day. But just for now, yes, Arduino IDE version 2 is out, and it is now a very nice-looking IDE. I look forward to having a bit of a fiddle with it. Anyhow, this blog post will be linked in the description of the video. It's a pretty nice read, and that's also where you can find links to the new IDE. And while we're on the subject, Arduino Day 2021 is coming up soon. It is on March 27th, the end of this month, and it is going to be another one of those events which is mostly going to be online because of Corona. It's one of the first things they say on this page, but the theme this year is very in-fitting with that. And the theme is undistancing, which is quite a lovely word, really. And the theme's kind of clear there. It's the fact that we are still physically quite isolated. But projects and education and all this kind of thing are the things that can bring us together. After all, the maker community has been on top of this for the whole way through. There's been COVID-related things and projects, many of which we've had on this show, some of which are based towards protecting yourself from the disease, but some of which are based to do with being social and being able to stay in touch, and the many, many Zoom hacks to make sure that you don't accidentally broadcast your toilet flushing, etc. Now, there is a little bit more information on this page, but a lot of it is aimed towards the people who might be wanting to actually organize their own Arduino events. So if you are wanting to try organizing a digital event, maybe for the first time, they have got a few tools in place to make it easier for you. There's a bit of information here. There's also an Arduino Day digital kit, which comes with a few things you can use on social media and a few various, mostly just nice things. If this was a physical event, they'd be giving you posters and stickers, and it looks like you're still going to be getting things like that, which are kind of cool, although in digital digital form. And yes, there's an FAQ here as well. I actually found this from the Arduino blog once again, and there's not much more information yet for everyone else. That will be coming up soon, but as soon as this was announced and as soon as there was information about it, I wanted to announce it because, yeah, if you are an event organizer and you want to get to it, now is the time. Up next, RISC-V. Now, if you're like me, you're excited about RISC-V and you've wanted to learn more about it, you haven't necessarily had the time, but all of these new stories of new microcontrollers and SBCs that use the RISC-V open source architecture are there. And yeah, it took me a while to even get my head around what RISC-V was in the first sitting, and now there is a course that explains it very well, and it comes from some pretty big names. Yes, the Linux Foundation and RISC-V International have teamed up for a pair of free courses on edX. edX is an educational site, much like Coursera, much like many of those. Some of you might be familiar with it already. And the courses themselves are, well, they're both free, but you can get them validated. Like many free online courses, you can pay about 126 euros and get a valid certificate to say that you have completed both of these courses if you want to. But by the same token, you can do them for free. They start, the day that I am recording this is when they start. I didn't realize it started quite so soon. I am enrolled in the first one. I am fairly certain that you can audit this course, which is do the free version of it at any point, and it doesn't matter if you're not enrolled at the very beginning. And yeah, this looks like it will be a fantastic introduction to RISC-V if you are already slightly technical minded but haven't actually studied any RISC-V before. Anyway, I will leave a link to where I found both of these in the description. I'd love to spend more time on it right now, but I'm afraid I can't. But yes, both these courses seem invaluable. Learning more about RISC-V in general in the first course and actually building a CPU using RISC-V architecture in the second. That's super exciting, and I really do hope I have the time to do it. Moving on to the Embedded World Conference. Now, regular viewer Gary Fuller asked us if we were going to talk about it or cover it, and actually, I was hoping to cover this show physically. I was going to go to the Messe. It's held in Nuremberg here in Germany, and we have family near Nuremberg. It would be a perfect place for me to go, and I was hoping to do an in-situ Electromaker show from the floor of the Embedded World Conference. Of course, that wasn't possible, and as it happened, I couldn't even attend the digital conference. I just haven't had the time, sadly. But if you would like to know what went on there, if you head to the Embedded World website, which I will leave a link to in the description, they have a closing report here. And that gives a bit of an overview of all the things that happened there, which is definitely worth a read. And one of the things it mentions is that all the notable talks and roundtables will be made available in video format after the fact. After all, it was all broadcast over video. But if there's a way of doing that at this stage, I haven't found it yet. But while digging through the huge program to try and find these videos, I saw a lot of titles of things that I think are very, very interesting indeed. And while much of it might go over my head, it's still the kind of thing that I'm very interested in hearing. And at the end of the day, the Embedded World Conference is where people at the very forefront of the technology that we all love playing with are working and interacting. And yeah, I would have loved to have been there, but luckily we will be able to follow it after the fact as soon as I can find out how to find the videos. And for our final bit of news this week, DietPi has released a new version. It is now up to version 7. And if you aren't familiar with DietPi, I guess the easiest way to describe it would be if you imagine a really lightweight and no-nonsense operating system for the Pi, you probably imagine something that is as horrifying and terrifying as Arch Linux to install, whereas DietPi is the opposite. They make everything very easy while still retaining a very lightweight system. It kind of just is a modular system is the way I like to think of it. It's a little bit more involved than that, but it's definitely worth checking out. So with the update to version 7, there is also a few new things you can get on DietPi, one of which is Docker Compose. And while I find web development generally terrifying, Docker is something that I quite like. This simple way of having these containers which just have the only bare things they need makes a lot more sense to me actually than a lot of other things. I am used to the idea of having several different single board computers or whatever that talk to each other, and to me Docker is just virtual little single board computers, but that's just my approach to it, I guess. Also, you get Steam now, and Steam for ARM is surprisingly well supported. There's a fair few games for it, and rather than having to jump through hoops to install it, you can just install it using the DietPi software repository. And yeah, there's a fair chunk of games that actually run on the Raspberry Pi 4 that I was surprised to see. Quake 4 being one of them. And yeah, got some fairly high resolution games that are running relatively smoothly. It's kind of cool. And one other notable thing here is MJPG Streamer. There are various things that do this on the Raspberry Pi already. This is essentially you plug a camera in and you can broadcast it over your browser just like this. It's a very easy way to set up network cameras, and this is again something that's just now supported out the box for DietPi. So if you are interested in alternate systems for your Raspberry Pi, DietPi is a very good one to look into. As I said before, it's as open and as big and as small as you want it to be, but without being horrifyingly break everything when you change one thing, like Arch. Duh. And now we return to funding website things, the part of the show where we look at things on funding websites. And we're starting, as we so often do on CrowdSupply, with the ESP32-M1 Reach Out. Now, this is an ESP32 development board, as it says in the title, but the thing that's notable about this is that it can communicate over a very long distance. So alongside an ESP32 system on chip and these GPIO pins you can see here in the image, these two antennas are capable of giving a line of sight range of 1.2 kilometers, while a typical Wi-Fi range of 200 to 400 meters. As I mentioned, this is to do with optimization and using the right parts. Tuning and matching, the range can be extended even further if the radio behaves as a repeater. Now, as you can see from the formatting of this page, this is pre-launch. You can subscribe if you are interested in seeing this when it does go live. I will be definitely coming back to it because how much this costs is going to be important as well. If these things are cheap, it would just be incredible. You could buy a whole host of them. And I'm not suggesting you do this because it may be illegal, but if you bought a load of these, you could put them all in different project boxes and you could basically go lamppost to lamppost and sit in the park and use your Wi-Fi from home. Now, there may be good reasons that you shouldn't do that. That's just the first thing that came into my mind. But anyway, all of the information about the board you can find here, and I will leave a link to it in the description. Definitely one we'll be coming back to. Long-range Wi-Fi. Who doesn't love Wi-Fi to go further? Moving over to Kickstarter with a pair of projects which I thought were so similar they must be from the same person. As it happens, it was just a coincidence, but I thought enough of a coincidence to put them in the show this week. And the first one is this rather elegant through-hole solder your own calculator circuit. Both of these are for soldering practice, and as you can see, this is a fairly simple device. It just gives you three 7-segment displays, two of which are for the input numbers, one of which is for the output numbers, and it will just add them together. This isn't going to be calculating anything particularly difficult, but what it is going to do is give you a nice idea of how the logic inside works, and of course plenty of soldering practice. And the thing I love about things like this is that these kits are cheap, readily available, and you have something at the end of it which is actually quite nice to look at. I'm not going to use something like this practically in my day-to-day life, but if I had one of these, I'd be very happy to have one as a way for me to practice soldering. I have actually ordered 2 of these because I fully intend to give one of these away as a gift to someone. Haven't decided who yet. Now, if I move myself out of the way over here, you can see that they have made 248 euros of an 843 euro goal. They really aren't asking for very much. The kit is $29 for a pledge, or you can spend $49 and you will be able to get the kit along with a cheap soldering kit, which is probably a very good way to get it as a gift for someone. If there's someone who doesn't already like soldering or anything, a good way to nudge them into trying it at least is to get them a cheap soldering kit along with something to practice on. You can get several of them. You can get 10 hobby kits plus soldering. You can get 10 calculator hobby kits. If I remember correctly, I just got 2 of the regular ones because I absolutely want to build one of these myself. I love soldering kits and soldering practice. I find it a very calming thing to do, but I'm going to give one of them away as a gift as well. As well as a lovely through-hole soldering kit and a very nice looking PCB, I love the design of this thing. It's using these NAND gate chips and full adder chips, which are essentially just condensed versions of the same ones you can make on a breadboard when you're learning about logic. I'm a big fan of these kind of soldering kits in general. This one, as I say, has not met its goal. I think it is the perfect gift, and since it is through-hole, it is perfect for a beginner to not only learn a bit of soldering, but learn a little bit about how computers worked before there was really computers, I guess. Following along in a similar theme, and in fact a very similar looking PCB, is the binary decoder soldering kit. Now this one is a little bit different. This is for SMD soldering, which is way more complicated than through-hole soldering. I have done a little SMD soldering and it's always been a pretty ugly affair. It's never gone all that well for me. I definitely could do with more practice, hence I particularly like the first sentence of this Kickstarter. I designed this learning kit to combine 2 things I struggled with the most when I started learning electronics: surface mount soldering and binary numbers. I feel you, Jim Heaney, I really do. I still struggle with binary numbers to this day, which is wild for someone who codes in C and uses microcontrollers as much as I do. But yes, this is, as you can see, it's a very nice little board, which combines an AT Tiny 1616, yep, with a bunch of numbers and a 7-segment display. And this chip here, which I don't know what it is, however, I think this is just for the USB connection. And it comes pre-programmed, so you can just solder it up and it will work. And there's a slightly better image of it working down here. Yeah, here are all of your bits, and you can turn them on or off, and it will show you the decimal version of the binary number underneath. A handy little tool to have. So I will leave a link to these in the description. Both of them are lovely kits. Both of them are great for different levels of soldering and different kinds of learning. And not only that, they're both very pretty. So I imagine that once you're finished with them, even if you don't have a day-to-day use for them, I could definitely see me putting this on the wall. That's right, mystery box competition. This is the mystery box. It contains things you can win. Some of them are awesome, some of them might be weird. And this week, that's a nice box. That's a nice box. Ooh. That is a nice box from Texas Instruments. Again, I think we had Texas Instruments last week. And this is the MSP430 Captivate technology. Captivate? Capacitive touch? Once again, the very next words on the box were Capacitive Touch Demonstration Board featuring the MSP430 FR2512 microcontroller. Cool. Now, as always, I've had a little bit of a shufty to see what this is all about, and I've found there is a page for it, of course, on the Texas Instruments website, along with this quite handy getting started guide, and I thought now would be a perfect time to break out the fancy second camera once again to give you a little look at what this is. So what you can see, this is an evaluation board for the Texas Instruments MCU in question. And that MCU is, as I mentioned, the MSP430FR2512, which is a microcontroller from Texas Instruments designed specifically for capacitive touch sensing. Now, the autofocus on the second camera here is having a hard time with this glass, I think. But if I flip it over, you'll be able to see on the back, there is a spot for a battery. And there is, of course, the MCU itself, along with everything else needed to talk via USB and things like that. Also notable here is that this is a little speaker, and out of the box this thing is flashed with firmware that will play a different tone for each button or pair of buttons, because it supports multi-touch. Presumably that's what this little diagram on there for C and E together makes a D, E and G together makes an F, etc. Yeah, it's a dedicated USB HID device. You don't need to install any drivers, you just plug it in and it acts like a human interface device. Pretty cool little thing. Now, this particular evaluation board is called the EVM430 Cap Mini, and I simply searched this on Google to bring up the Texas Instruments page about it, and from there you can move to the Getting Started guide and the various things about it. But anyway, we have a prize, but as always, we now need to pick a prize winner. And our winner this week is Naveen, and I absolutely agree, Naveen. I like the tiny RP2040 as well. I assume you're talking about that little development board from Pimoroni we had on last week's show. It does look like an exciting little thing. But yes, we'll be in touch with you as to how you can get your address, how we can get your address, you probably have your address already, and how we can send this lovely little evaluation board out to you. And this really is a lovely little thing. I hope you have a lot of fun with it, and if you do end up coming up with a cool project with it, please let us know. And we're going to close out this week's show with a few projects that I've seen from the week, beginning with a video from the Unexpected Maker, who's got his hands on one of the new ESP32-S3 chips in evaluation board form. Now, we've covered projects from Unexpected Maker on the show before, but this is especially cool just simply because the ESP32-S3 is something that a lot of people are excited about when it's going to come. And as mentioned, they're not in full production yet. This is just a very early demo version of it that he got sent. And what a fantastic thing it is to be able to see it, because as always, the video is incredibly detailed and there is a lot of knowledge being dropped here, which is fantastic. The video goes on to use the ESP IDF, that is the software development kit and toolchain from Espressif, for working with the ESP32-S3. And I think this is just setting up a little blink sketch. But yeah, this is just a fantastic early view into what will be probably the next big ESP32-S3, ESP32 chip. I may be wrong about this, but I sort of get the impression that the ESP32-S2 was meant to be kind of the stand-in replacement for the ESP8266, which is still a fantastic chip. The amount of stuff you can do with it, given how cheap it is incredible. But I guess the S3 is supposed to be the slightly bigger brother that will take over from the original ESP32 chips, as they are a little bit more expensive, but they are also a lot more powerful. Anyway, I could be completely wrong about that. That's something I need to do a bit more research about. But for now, I will leave a link to this video in the description. It is a fantastic view into what is about to come. Moving over to the Raspberry Pi, and I do mean the Raspberry Pi. I know we've covered a lot of Raspberry Pi Pico projects on the show recently, and we will definitely be getting back to it. I've seen some very cool ones, even just today, that I didn't have time to put into this week's show, but back to the good old Raspberry Pi, and using GPIO pins for something I have never seen done before. This is directly using GPIO pins as a radio transmitter, and using that RF frequency transmission to control the ceiling fan in the house. Hey folks, Future Ian here with a very quick interjection. Not really sure how, but I somehow managed to not mention the name of this channel, which is River's Educational Channel on YouTube. There will of course be a link to it in the description. I don't know how I managed to not say the name of the channel, but anyway, on with whatever I was saying. So as well as going through the process of what was actually physically done with the Raspberry Pi and programming it, it goes through a little bit of the theory behind how it all works as well, and how you can use the Raspberry Pi pins in order to approximate a radio wave. And there's a lot of stuff in here that is sort of familiar if you've ever studied any digital signal processing of any kind, really. All the kind of things that you're seeing on the screen are the things that I'm more familiar with from learning basically how to generate, well, music. I mean, big surprise. Generating digital, analog sounding music using digital devices, and this is a way that it can be done. But this is obviously working in a much, much higher frequency range. This video is part 2 of a series about this very subject, and yes, as you can see, it is working. It is very, very cool, and I've never seen anyone do this with Raspberry Pi GPIO pins. It is a very cool thing indeed. Now, Joel Creates makes a lot of very... Now, Joel Creates makes a lot of very funny and very inventive videos. He is a maker who makes things, and those things he makes are very funny. He's very much in the vein of people like William Osmond and Michael Reeves, and this is, well, horrifying is what it is. But this video is Joel Creates' reaction to the absolute plethora of Manscaped ads that have turned up everywhere. This is the personal grooming company that is trying to make you buy things to shave various parts of your body. Joel Creates had in a previous episode, or a webisode, or whatever you call them, created a very aggressive, if functional, electric toothbrush, which is the device he has in his hand. And so he replaced them with razor blades and tested them out on a variety of things, including tennis balls and an Elmo doll. And yes, it's just as violent and horrific as it sounds, and very, very funny. If you aren't familiar with Joel Creates, he's created a lot of crazy things like this in the past, and I think you will not find his channel boring by any means. Like I say, if you like a good slice of comedy along with your inventive maker culture, Joel Creates is a channel you can get lost in for a while. We featured BitLooney on the show before, partially because of his fantastic projects like the huge LED wall he made out of ping pong balls and LEDs, obviously, and also because there's a fair chunk of good educational content in with his videos. Now, this time around, he set his sights on creating holographic displays using resin printing. This video is all the things I've just said above and more. It tells you a lot about how these 3D displays work, along with those 3D cards that you may have seen. He goes into exactly how they all work, and then goes through various ways that you can try and manufacture them yourself using resin printing, taking you through what worked, what didn't, why it worked, and why it didn't work. Every BitLooney video is fantastic, but I feel like this one is a step up. It really goes through a lot of new things, and it really pushes the limits of what you can manufacture at home using relatively cheap tools. Finally, today we're looking at Zach Friedman of Voidstar Lab. Now, somehow we haven't featured any of his projects directly on the show before, and I find that amazing because he has had a meteoric rise in the last few months. He's went from something like 4,000 subscribers a little while ago to several hundred thousand. He's at 150,000 subscribers, and it is absolutely deserved. He's one of the most exciting new maker channels that I've come across. And any one of these videos and any one of these things is worth watching. But his latest video is something that was a little bit different in a way that I thought was really notable. And that is his Hope 2020 vodcast. Now, this is something that was actually recorded, as the date suggests, last year in 2020. This was meant to be a physical hardware hacking event that he was supposed to be speaking at and couldn't, obviously. So this is the digital version of it. And what it is just a glorious ride through the horrible things that people do when developing hardware professionally in order to make it work for various reasons. If you haven't come across one of his videos before, he is a fantastic presenter. He's a very funny guy, a very knowledgeable guy, and as well as learning a lot of stuff about how to make hardware and how to iterate over prototypes, because he is a prototype creator, that is his job. Yeah, this is also just a nice, if slightly gory dive into how bad things can get and still work, I guess is the best way to put it. But yes, this is not a short thing. It's a full half-hour talk, and a very, very well put together one, and one that I'm looking forward to diving back to and actually seeing right through to the end, because I was watching this today before I started recording and then had to stop in order to record the show. But yes, as mentioned, this is another one of those channels where I suspect once you've watched this, you'll go back and watch one of his other videos and get lost in it for a while, so maybe set just a little bit of time aside for it. That was our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll be back next week with a whole host of new things to look at, but for now, I hope you're having a fantastic and safe week. As always, let me know what you're up to in the comments, and I will see you next time.